Mula Vinaka, Kia Rana, Maori, Eko Mir Omo, Fakalofa Atu, Hello, Talofa, Malo Ni, and a very good evening to you all. I am very pleased to see our friends and colleagues joining us all the way from Cook Islands, Nauru, Kiribati, Samoa, Tonga, Vanuatu, and Solomon Islands for this evening session. I have got their confirmation. I know they'll be in soon, subject to their connectivity issues, but I hope we can have them here. I can see most of them have joined us. We are also live on our Facebook page, and we are live on Facebook on the US Embassy Suva's Facebook page. We kickstarted our Young People Talanoa series from June this year, and we have held a number of these sessions, with the latest being the Pride Month series. And tonight's session is the season finale of the Entrepreneurs series. So a warm welcome to you all. I wish to state at the outset that the views expressed in this session tonight are of our speakers and mine alone, and not the views of the Embassy Suva. Now, before I introduce our very amazing panelists and get started with the background and into the event, I would like to invite the US Embassy Suva's acting public diplomacy officer to give some opening remarks. Over to you, Venus.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. I just wanted to thank you very much for being here. Sashi, Kiran from France, Fiji, Bram from UN Capital Development Fund, John Apted from Munro. Good evening and welcome to our third and final Embassy Youth Council on youth entrepreneurship amidst the COVID-19 pandemic. During the last two Talanoa sessions, we featured representatives from the Ministry of Commerce, Tourism, Trade, and Transportation, speakers from entrepreneurship councils, and remarkable young entrepreneurs that have risen from the COVID-19 challenges by exploring, experimenting, challenging, collaborating with fellow entrepreneurs to support one another and stay in the business. Tonight, I am proud to see that our US Embassy Council has reached out to experts from Fiji and the Pacific region to conclude the Talanoa session on youth entrepreneurship. We welcome your insight and advice on the realities of this pandemic and its impact on young entrepreneurs. Since we began this series, our speakers have shared a great deal about the challenges of trying to stay in business. They have also discussed issues that have tested their entrepreneurial creativity and business practices. This evening, I will be hearing from seasoned topic of development and next steps. And thank you so much to our speakers for your generous support and participation in this evening's Talanoa. I would like to take this moment as well to give a big shout out to the Embassy Youth Council for putting this together, particularly Aneet, Avikash, and Sheldon for organizing tonight's event. Thank you for joining us. I wish you all a successful and engaging Talanoa.
Thank you very much, Venus, for those words. Now, many of you, those who have joined us live here and on Facebook, they're watching us, must be wondering, what are these three beautiful, golden and wise people doing on a Young People Talanoa series? So as I mentioned again earlier on, that this is the season finale. So let me clear those doubts that we have had, like Venus said, some amazing other actual young people coming in speaking to our previous two entrepreneur sessions. And tonight we're bringing you what we youths call Friends of Young People. And Friends of Young People, these panelists tonight will share insights from personal, professional experiences that they have accumulated from years in their field. And of course, they all started off as young people, and they're still young at heart. So it's not easy to introduce them fully, given our set time frame, but I will try my best to do justice to all of you. So let me begin by first introducing Ms. Shashi Kiran, the director of Friend Fiji. And I'm not sure if she remembers me, but some 8 years ago, in a remote village called Pai Pai, Lautoka in Bakambuli, I first met her there when I was 16 years old, as she was walking at the heart of grassroots people on her journey of supporting women and girls in villages around Fiji, empowering them and promoting the little tools she had and support that she could offer to help them run their micro businesses, small businesses, helping them gain access to markets So that's how I know you, Ms. Kiran. And of course, I won't go any further because friend Fiji, between then and now, has come a long way under your leadership. And you have been supporting micro, small, and medium enterprises through a lot of ways. So of course, Ms. Kiran has a lot to share with us tonight, just like our next two speakers. Moving to our next speaker, panelist, Mr. Bram Peters. Bram is currently the Pacific lead with the United Nations Capital Development Fund, or the UNCDF. Under Bram's leadership, UNCDF played an instrumental role in helping Vodafone set up mobile money or M-Pesa platform. The overall objective of UNCDF is to improve financial preparedness and resilience of Pacific Islanders, specifically vulnerable segments of society and economic sectors towards climate change and natural hazards. UNCDF jointly implemented the Pacific Financial Inclusion Program that ran from 2008 to 2020 with the UN Development Program. And this program aims to increase access and usage of former financial services for Pacific Islanders. This is done by supporting financial service providers to innovate with products and services designed especially for mass market customers. So Bram tonight brings us a much wider and regional perspective of some innovative programs and projects, including opportunities for small and medium enterprises. Moving forward, our third speaker for tonight, our panelist, is Mr. John Apted, who is a legal practitioner and a partner at Munro Leys. Mr. Apted is an influential figure, especially amongst young aspiring lawyers and youths in Fiji and of course abroad. He brings with him a wealth of experience and knowledge, having practiced in the area of constitutional law, employment, administrative, general commercial law, and intellectual property law. So yes, Mr. Apted may have seen businesses rise and fall in his professional capacity, and he is well known amongst the MSME sectors. He's a renowned social media celebrity, and he's been supporting a lot of entertainment sector, arts sector, and local businesses and promoting them through his own social media platforms. So welcome, John, Sashi, and Bram tonight. I'm very pleased to have you here with us as our friend. Now moving to our main ingredient tonight, that's the topic, and that is resilience, building resilience. Now, resilience requires entrepreneurs to engage in two somewhat contradictory activities. One is bouncing back from the collapse of markets, breaking the supply chains and depletion of workforce capacity, and the other is learning how to leap forward into markets, supply chains, and talent markets, where the rules for survival and success are clear or unclear and changing. And to talk about these rules, opportunities for survival, successes, and to share this with us from their own perspective, we have, of course, our three panelists that I've introduced. And out of the many that we found, or the many key areas that we found where we can discuss this tonight through all three of you panelists, was the three topics that you're going to each speak about. So we will try and flow these discussions in a secular way, giving each of you an opportunity to also speak on some other topics that each of you will be sharing tonight. And of course, our audience will have time to ask questions. So to all our audience who have joined us, you have the Q&A function on your screens, and using those Q&A function, you can start typing in your questions as our speakers, as our panelists start speaking. And when the time comes for our direct engagement with the panelists, we will, of course, ask them questions. Now, the first topic that we found really interesting that we could use in our season finale tonight is of leadership resilience. And to talk about leadership resilience, I would now like to ask Ms. Sashi Kiran to share her perspective. And on that note, given Friend Fiji's history, Ms. Kiran, of working with several MSMEs over the years and witnessing how far Friend Fiji itself has come under your leadership, and this is to do with the professional relationship amongst your stakeholders, with various other women and girls that you have supported, and your suppliers and customers in maintaining that relationship. What were some of the challenges that you faced and the businesses that you supported faced pre-COVID, and what are some of the challenges they face now? Would you like to share those, Ms. Kiran? Over to you.
Thank you so much, Aneet, and thank you for organizing this event, and thank you for inviting us to this panel. Really, really appreciate it. I honestly found this question pretty difficult because I guess when we are on the path, we just carry on without really pausing and thinking about some of the things. And this feels like a very personal question, so it made me really think. I think one of the things that entrepreneurs face when they start is the smaller you are, the harder it is to break through the market. And believing in yourself is something that is, the beginning. And you're right, while we have assisted many people with a poultry or bees or candle making or mushroom starting, we also have women who are making, say, herbal teas or flour at home or chutneys. Card making by the deaf youth. And all of them have had major challenges even prior to COVID because of supplies, because of natural disasters, because of fluctuating markets, because of consistency. But since you're talking about leadership, I think one of the things is very important is consistency and honesty. Because we have been consistent with our suppliers for a very long time, when COVID pandemic hit, we can honestly talk to our buyers and talk about the challenges, and then we give a commitment and we try and live up to it, and they trust us. So I think the trust factor is extremely important. The other is the leadership has to foresee what's going to happen. So even before COVID pandemic hit Fiji, because we were looking at what was happening around the world, we knew we had to start preparing. So before last March, when Fiji started suffering, by January, February, we had started preparing for it. And even now, what has happened is, for example, right now, most of our staff, we're asking them to operate from home, and we're trying to develop things that they could do from home in terms of livelihood, people who are involved in livelihood. But we know that October, November, December is crucial time for us when chilies and mangoes and all that would be in season. And if we don't develop it, then we'll have no supplies for next year. Having said that, West is in the grips of escalating crisis. So how do you manage a crisis and have your supply and think through the markets is something that our leadership has to consistently think about, and also think about the safety and the market value chain. And it constantly requires the leadership to think far more than just today. And it's not easy. But having said that, we have seen some amazing entrepreneurship. You might have heard about Pipe Dreams. These were young boys, an accountant at a resort. All these people were involved in tourism. And when the pandemic hit, they said the first thing they went through was that loss of identity and loss of professionalism. But then friends came together. One of them has carpentry skills, and they all have come together, and now they developing very creatively. You might have seen they work at in the rock market in Suva. They're basically going around and evolving. They've evolved a market for things out of nothing, and that's something we've seen. We've seen some of the people who, for example, were in a takeaway, but now are putting it in the vans and taking it to people's houses because they know people are not coming out of their house. So it needs constant thinking and innovation and responding to the market. For example, right now, there's a market exists. People are not getting out of the house. How do we take bread? How do we take livelihoods to them? And another key point that we've seen, it's quite amazing how people, because almost everybody in Fiji has Facebook, and people just turn to social media to start discussing and organizing the supply and markets. One difficulty that we see people having is the online banking aspect or use of transfer of cash, and how do they actually, or the smaller they are, especially, it's harder for them to think, how do they do safe online banking and things like that. And that is a constant challenge that we hear, but a lot of people actually turn to digital marketing. And we are seeing a rise in an interest in digital marketing because it's a safe way of purchasing while you're being at home and still being able to support the entrepreneurs. But it's not easy in all contexts. Huh? So especially the extreme rural, the vegetable market vendors, the fish suppliers who are supplying to resorts. So then we have seen organizations like, for example, Foodwell that has come up, and they're purchasing in a safe way from all these fisher folk and seafood and all, and then they're able to do online marketing and do delivery. So we've seen a very nice innovation linkages from where market is actually talking to the grassroots suppliers and are talking to the potential purchasers. But I think there is a lot more need for education and more conversations that's needed to start getting people to think what else. For example, you must have seen sea salt from silver sable. And sea is something we've had around us for a very long time. And it was a ancient skill that we've had. But most of our sea salt is imported. So now, and that's a conversation we've been trying to have with our people for a long time. But now people are actually thinking, yes, what is the skills I have? What are the resources I have? And where is the market gap? Because while cakes and pies is something we see all over social media, there are too many suppliers for that. So what are the niche things that we could develop that not a lot of people are doing? And how do we push ourselves into that market is crucial. Like artists have very specific things, and we know certain things we want, certain people would be able to deliver. But there are a lot of resources. I'll tell you, for example, like Vanwalevu was very well known for, it was very well known for the dried fish, for example, and kadwadu. But that's sort of totally gone out of skills. A lot of people have lost that skill. But we are able to purchase or like for food ration packs that we're doing. We'd like to have dried fish. Smoked fish was something that people used to do. Now we're evolving a market for smoked fish because it actually can live longer. So it's extremely important for now. What that we are seeing is people are actually turning back to the traditional skills. You've seen Rice Beyond Reef using, the mat making. And I think Fiji has a lot of potential with the traditional existing skills we've had, weaving skills, bamboo weaving skills, that could be turned into innovative products for today. So sea salt, we are seeing seafood, dried seaweed that we are working with at the moment, dried mangoes, katai, that's some things that Indians know very well, we knew how well to do. What we've also seen in the last generation, a lot of these skills have dropped off. For example, most of the lentils is purchased from overseas. Most of the turmeric that you see in our supermarkets are imported into the country, when our hills are full of turmeric. But somebody being able to work with the farmers into developing the quality that's required to be able to link it to the market, local market. Fiji alone has a huge market for turmeric, and organizing the prices and things like that. So there is quite, I think the leadership, it needs to be constantly thinking, have a long-term vision, be able to look at what locals have at the moment and constantly connect to market. Now, with the pandemic, we know things will get far worse, probably in the next couple of months, but people need to survive. So how do we ensure that the products are developed and marketed in a safe way? People are getting their regular income, and that is not in a normal way. And I think there's a lot more to think about there. I'll pause there, and maybe I'll come back to that in question answers. But that's how I would summarize. Trust is important, confidence is important, thinking long-term is important, looking at skills and resources, and constantly innovating, knowing your suppliers and understanding your buyers, and as much as possible using digital spaces right now, because that's what's helping people get the items that they need staying at home. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Kiran. Now I recall that you said it's a tough question, but I can see now you have, as soon as you started speaking, you actually linked. You brought up digital technology, you brought up innovation, you brought up sectors that don't actually have to, maybe artists and entertainment sector that cannot easily sell their products online. And we have Peters from the development agency, and then we have John here. So you have actually helped me more, and now you see how it is connected again back to all the speakers. So Ms. Kiran brought about the fact that not all small and micro businesses have that access and platform to market their products, and the challenges with the leadership. And if there's not a constant leadership and consistent leadership and a far-reaching audience, that means you will have a revenue, a financial problem, an operational problem. And here is, I want to bring John, you in. is that now we have seen, before I go to, of course, Bram, to talk from a development agency perspective, John, given that Fiji government is providing 200 million loan facility to help these Fiji businesses meet operational needs, and these are loans, of course, and given your interaction with these several businesses, including your own involvement with the entertainment and arts sector and other sectors in general, and given what Ms. Kiran has just shared, that a lot of these sectors aren't on a level playing field. How do you view this lowness? Do you think it will be sustainable for these small businesses, entertainment sector, arts sector? Will it make them resilient, or will it make them more vulnerable post-COVID, or put them at a risk? What are your thoughts on this, John? You're on mute, John, sorry.
I'm not used to being mute. Okay, thanks for the question. First of all, I'd just like to congratulate Sashi. She's covered almost everything in the few minutes that she spoke. I'd just like to lead off, before I go to the loans, she's absolutely correct that the essence of surviving now is trust. It's always been about trust. When you're in business, it's about the trust of your buyers, it's about the trust of your lender. In the current situation, as markets close, as supply gets hard, as your skills are no longer needed, it's about innovation. So the two big things for me are trust, innovation, and finding markets. Going to your question about the loans, for small and medium enterprises who are our audience, the $200 million government loan scheme is very, very generous. It's it has great terms. What it provides is that micro businesses, which are businesses where the turnover is 50,000 and less, can access $10,000 in a loan. Those from 50,000 to 300,000 in turnover can get a bit more. I think it's 20,000. And then the bigger businesses, 300,000 and above, get 50,000 and more. The terms are that there's no interest that you pay for 2 years. The government pays the interest. For the micro businesses, the government guarantees 90% of your loan, so that if you can't pay it back, the government will pay it back, which doesn't mean you can walk away. So that's all there. But the main thing to remember, though, is that 200 million sounds like a lot of money. But there's a lot of businesses out there who will be applying. The FDB is already accepting applications. There is a process. It's not a grant. You don't just, it's not like your FNPF money. You have no right to it. You've got forms to fill out. You've got documents to provide. And like I say, it's finite. So if you want to access this money, you need to do it pretty soon. You've got to get onto the FDB website, go into your FDB branch, ring them up, find out how you get it. So there's that money. What it's there for is to help tide you over at the moment through this difficult period, and also to help you relaunch. So you can use it for wages. You can use it to invest in new technology and all of that. But it's not a gift. And, you know, for the small and micro enterprises, we'll talk a little bit more later about using, you know, digital platforms and social media. The 10,000 that you might qualify for shouldn't be wasted on a new iPhone for $4,000. You know, like, this is money that you should use to make money or to tide you over. And so, you know, like, yes, it's a great thing, but it's their loans, and you still need to pay it. You still need to use it wisely. If I could just talk about the arts and media sector and lead off from what Sashi was talking about, there's been a great deal of innovation in the arts and entertainment sectors. The people who've lost the tourist market have diversified. A lot of them are now using social media platforms to entertain the Fijian diaspora. And they're using traditional ideas or communal ideas like Soli. Fijians love to help each other. They love to help other people. They love singing. So now the latest thing amongst the entertainment community is to do a show on Twitter Space or Facebook Live, and people donate money from all over the world to the artists. So that's one way they're doing it. The other innovation that I've seen on social media, if I can just segue into another thing from what Sashi's saying. Sashi was saying that, there's too many cakes and pies on social media. In fact, one of the things I noticed is that suddenly every indigenous Fijian person who has a birthday has a birthday cake now. And the photos are on social media. So birthday parties, because they can no longer gather, social media birthday parties with the family in the bubble and the big cake is now a must. So every day I see like 7 or 8 stories and photographs of people having birthdays with these elaborate birthday cakes that a few months ago I didn't see. So obviously the cake makers have innovated. The funerals, because people can only 10 people can go to a funeral. All of a sudden, I'm seeing people offering video services and photography services to allow people all over the world and who can't come to the funeral to be with the funeral. So there's innovation there. So maybe I've spoken a bit too long. I'll give the mic back to you.
Thank you, John. No, I mean that's really great on the way you picked up Sashi's topic. And Bram, now coming to you, both Sashi and John have now mentioned more than once about innovation, about digital social media platform, and we agree that digital is the future. And the Pacific, like John just explained, we are fast catching up. So given we understand that UNCDF has launched 2 programs in the region, one on the inclusive digital economy, focused on women and marginalized groups. One is the Pacific Digital Economy Program and leveraging digital finance to increase the resilience of African, Caribbean, Pacific countries. So can you tell us more about this and what it entails for small businesses in Fiji or in the region, connecting to what John was saying about the level playing field? And there's an increase in social media presence, digital marketing. Everybody is now transforming into this. So what those programs entail, how it helps these small and micro businesses? What are some opportunities for these people?
Yeah, thanks, Aneet, and thanks for the invite to speak on this webinar. Really, and some really salient points raised there by both Sashi and John, and particularly around say how people become very resourceful and innovative when hardship strikes, and I think more and more we've seen that let's say digital is playing a very important role, not only digital finance but in the way people congregate and meet. But a couple of things that I think are important to mention before I go into say what are the areas of work that we operate in. I think we've seen quite a lot of efforts from government as well as development partners in recent years to support digitization, and it's not only in Fiji. I know most attendees on this webinar are from Fiji, but I take a bit of more of a regional lens in this case, and areas that we see, for instance, Solomon Islands, where fiber optic cable has landed, and in other countries as well. But so these are significant investments. But what we've noticed is that that extra step that is required to actually reach the last mile, and I think Sashi also mentioned that it's quite interesting to be online, etc. And it's quite affordable in some countries. I think Fiji is quite cheap compared to many other Pacific countries. But reaching that last mile and going to the outer islands, think of, for instance, if you run a business in the Lao group, it's completely different setting compared to, let's say, if you're running it in Vitilevu, for instance. So last mile connectivity is a challenge, and not even speaking about all the other operational challenges that comes with it. But other areas that we see is for instance device ownership. Like again, Fiji is quite advanced compared to some other countries in the Pacific with respect to smartphone ownership, and with that also it's not only owning a phone but also the ability to charge it. Many people live off the grid. Then next problems that you typically bump into is that, are people, let's say, smart enough or tech savvy enough to operate with these devices? And that's not only going on Facebook and liking and posting messages, but actually, if you run a business, like, can you run a business off your smartphone, and what does that entail? So these are definitely areas that the programs that we are have just launched that we're looking into to address. So you can expect from us some innovation challenges to come up, and very specifically, and I think Sashi mentioned that as well, is that let's say online banking and very specifically payments, accepting online payments is once you look at selling an item is one thing, but then settling the transaction in a financial way and accepting the payment is usually a nightmare for quite a number of people. And those are the areas that we look into with respect to our programming going forward. I think one area that I would like to highlight is that Fiji is very much as a, let's say, a regional function. You're more or less of a regional hub, and with that also you're an example to many other countries. And what I really hope is that the work that we do in Fiji and is that it provides a good example for other countries to also come on board. And where specifically this is important is actually to crowd in other players from the likes of Australia and the Asian markets to become interested in investing in the Pacific. Because what we very often see is that they do not even consider the Pacific interesting enough to actually invest, because the markets are too small and fragmented. And I think that's an area where we as development partners, but also, let's say, the government stakeholders and the likes of PIPs can play an important role to actually create that regional market and make the market more interesting for outsiders to come and invest in that digital infrastructure that is required to, let's say, speed up the process of doing business and overcoming, let's say, the aftermath of COVID-19. I'll stop there.
Thank you, Bram. I mean, listening to three of you, I mean, there's so much to take on and discuss, and I think we can go on the whole night. Of course, we're not planning to go on the whole night, but there's something important that now, after Bram has spoken, came up in my mind, and of course, connecting this back with the two other entrepreneurial sessions that we had, is the issue that, of course, digitalization is needed. Technological innovation is needed. I mean, it's going to play an important role. But there's a topic that came up of digital literacy, and something, Sashi, you started with talking about is that it's not the same level of playing field in the rural communities, in the remote communities, that they can access these online platforms. Put their, for example, if someone is doing karwaru or that traditional fish, how can they sell it and online and receive payments? I mean, of course, M-Pesa is there, but of other aspects like art and craft and candle making, all those kind of things. So what is your take from your experience of how much these people are connected to these platforms? And of course, here we're talking about the digital divide, and we'll go to John after you to talk about the digital divide. So Sashi, from your experience, what do you think is the level playing field? How much connected are these people from your experience to these platforms?
It's extremely difficult. And thank you to all the speakers for actually talking about it. And Bram talked about Lao. We right now are trying to assist the Yasavas and the Mamanudas because a lot of them had lost their jobs. So we're working on various coconut products there and various sea products there. And a simple thing like, so initially the plan was that we will go there and train them. And now we're trying to organize the Zoom sessions on a daily basis to connect with them and train them. And it's so difficult. It's so difficult. Some of them are better connected to Viber, but not enough connected to Zoom. And we need to show them the products, so the step-by-step of making certain things. And then, getting that across to check the quality. It is extremely difficult. And we thought, let's just, the situation is forcing us to, work with online, try and train online. And soon you'll be seeing a lot more training opportunities with Friend on, soap making, charcoal making, sea salt making, things that we think we can help people make and then connect them to the markets. So what it seems, seems to happen is there are people, intermediaries like us. We are not a profit-making body, so it really, like, we're not charging them a huge chunk, but we still have to cover the cost. So we then become the intermediaries for these rural or the outer islands to come, organize, make sure the quality is good for us to then be able to market it. So I think then agencies like us become a little crucial in the current environment, because its access is a major issue, and even we are having massive difficulty in being able to just connect, train, get the quality across, get the money across. Now for Yasawas, we insist that we don't want to do cash transactions because we don't want to put our staff at risk, or when they come to the wharf, we don't want to put them at risk. We would like to do online banking. They don't have that access. And where would they go and remove that money and be able to buy the things that they require? So then they're asking us to purchase the food and things that they require and take it to the wharf. So the logistics around the pandemic and keeping everybody safe and being able to do business is not the easiest. It is quite a huge challenge, the whole digital divide. I'll take John the next bite at what you threw at him. You're muted, John.
Yes, go ahead, John. You're on mute again.
I was so busy listening to Sashi, I don't know what the rest of the question was.
Not an issue, John. So, John, Bram talked about, and then you all, when you started, you talked about the importance of social media, digital platforms, and you very well explained how artists are marketing their products, how they're coming to the markets. So, but as Sashi also mentioned, that in some places, or with most places, remotest places in Fiji, where we have these small micro businesses operating, they're not connected to the digital markets. I mean, it might be more costly. Like now, Sashi explained that Yasawas, where will they go to take out the money from the bank? So there's a different level of transaction taking place there, which means that we have an uneven playing field when it comes to accessing the digital field or the platform. Now, compared to your, or given your experience with these businesses and entrepreneurs, what is your take on the digital literacy and the digital divide in Fiji?
Yeah, I'd have to agree with Sashi. I mean, the digital literacy is an urban phenomenon. It's very much an urban phenomenon. Even though, people in the Yasawas worked in hotels, they've got phones, they can, in the old days, they had credit and all of that. In this environment, how do transactions happen? How does the money move? That's the big challenge. So the only solution at the moment is what Sashi talked about, where you have an intermediary who does the transactions using their digital platform on VT level, who buys and somehow barters or sends supplies, or in a strange way, the purchasing of supplies is almost like it was in the 19th century, where you're forced to barter and give goods in exchange for goods, precisely because of the uneven financial digital platform. It's not the communication per se, it's the transactions. How do you get money across to them, and how do they use the money? That's the problem.
It's funny you said that, John, because we're not only going back to barter, but I think a lot of products that we are making is also from the traditional systems now.
From the 19th century.
So it's really, yeah. really reconnecting back.
Well, thank you, John. And I had a follow-up on that. Now, given that we have seen, of course, there's a digital divide. The platform, it's an issue of access to the platform. Now, in light of the fact that the pandemic has affected business in a lot of ways, especially the small and micro businesses, I think policy intervention has been one of the most important one to keep sectors afloat. Now, if you can, how or what do you recommend in terms of policy changes? Do you think some kind of policy intervention will help breach this digital divide? Do you have a take on that? Or we can go to Bram.
John, you're muted.
Who is that for? For me, or that's more
Go
a
ahead,
Bram
John.
question, I
I'll
think,
chime
about
in.
policy.
Okay, so let's hear you, Bram, and then John obviously can of course speak up.
Yeah, no, I think a couple of comments there. I think there's definitely in terms of the digital divide, not only in terms of literacy levels, but in general, I think the government has a very important role to play. I think when it comes to literacy, it's something that I think it's not only the government who should play a role. There is also the private sector and particularly around let's say the challenges that were raised in the discussion so far around settling transactions. I mean, platforms like M-Pesa have provided a very good avenue, I think, to address many of the challenges. But to Sashi's point, it's quite a number of people are not tech savvy enough to participate and transact on those kind of platforms. So they need support, and that's an area where also we as development partners can provide support to the likes of Vodafone and Digicel. Not only because it's in their interest to do more business and make more money out of it, but it's actually to ensure that all people benefit from their services, and not only people that are in, say, urban and peri-urban areas, but also people living in more remote locations. So I think that's definitely an important element. And the other areas where I believe we should look at is not only in terms of literacy, but it's also in terms of, like I explained, device ownership and making sure that 4G doesn't stop with, let's say, with Nandi and Suva and Lambasa, but going in other parts of Fiji, as well as in other countries in the Pacific as well. Like many parts of Solomon Islands, for instance, do not even have a coverage yet, or are only covered by 2G. And I think that's an area, I think it's all nice that a big fiber optic cable has landed on shore in Honiara, but it's actually, how do we connect people in Isabel province and in other outer provinces to ensure that they also benefit from those kind of services? And very often what we've noticed is that the market, as I explained earlier, is that the market is too small to make it commercially viable for a private sector investment. So that's where both development partners as well as government need to come in and let's say de-risk those kind of transactions and ensure that those people that live in those outer provinces are also benefiting from those services. John?
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. I mean, that's the challenge, and government's there to promote it, and to make platforms like M-Pesa work in the remote communities. Like, so that you can use it to purchase, you can use it to get money, you can use it to spend money within your community. I think the government's assistance to Vodafone to develop Vodacart, or whatever that cart thing is, that's also like an important policy initiative by our government to help SMEs sell online and transact. That's a really, really good initiative.
Yeah, it's actually one of a nice example of how we partnered with Vodafone to develop Viticard. That came out of an innovation challenge, and whereby we de-risk the entry of a fintech coming from Singapore and partnered with Vodafone to develop this platform. But actually, most of the entrepreneurs that are currently on the platform are the bigger ones, the likes of Prouds, etc. But we want to see the smaller MSMEs to be able to transact on that platform as well and sell their services and goods on that platform. And but they need a lot of hand-holding, and many of them are not yet ready in terms of the paperwork, in terms of sometimes also the technology that they have available to be able to transact on those platforms. And those are the areas that need intervention from the likes of us.
Yeah, but I think that's a really good initiative.
Sashi, yeah.
Sorry, John. I just wanted to throw in a completely different angle, not necessarily only digital platforms, but financial platforms. So, because if we see rural banking in Fiji, rural banking is considered almost like a go to the poor, bank $2. It's like a very stepsisterly kind of the way it's treated. For the longest time, I've been saying to the banks, if you go to a rural area, so if you go to a Dalo farmer, in 1 acre, he's able to pull out $90,000 or $60,000 worth of Dalo. A farmer from Yangona is able to, in an acre, probably pull out $200,000 worth of Yangona. Now, that money, because there's no platform, it's generally used into drinking, into lots of things, let's buy a Prado and all that sort of thing. There is not enough work being done in engaging people in investment. That $250,000 or say $60,000, when it's pulled out, okay, what are the plans for maybe renovating your house, your scholarship fund, but also here's an investment fund where you can put it. That kind of rural education is not happening. And so, for example, Koratumbu district in Ra, very well to do because they were Yangona farmers. But when they were struck by TC Winston, they were without a roof for more than 2 years. So they had all this income they had been earning, but there was no investment and there was no saving. And hence they didn't have, so if you don't have any capital, how on earth do you either do your personal development or think about investment? They are so disconnected. They still don't have electricity, but they sit by the ocean. They, have beautiful fish and octopus and things, but the connectivity to market is an issue. So I think banking system does not realize there's so much focus on urban that we forget that there's a lot of cash actually in rural areas, and we need to evolve those platforms for them to be able to organize banking, proper investments, proper literacy around these investments, and proper development. And if it's well done, a lot of our rural people do not need aid or donors or people like us to go and teach them what to do, because they have the capital, they have the resources, they have the connection. It's just the connectivity, both digital and financial, for them to be able to take that next step up.
If I could just respond to that, I know that ANZ, for a fact, has a whole financial literacy program that they take out to the rural areas. It's generally on request, though. So a community has to request that the financial literacy people come, or usually they partner with an NGO. If the NGO is doing some outreach in a particular community that involves economic development or something like that, the NGO will ask ANZ to go with them. And they do financial literacy, but 4 hours of somebody from Suva standing there and telling you how to save your money is not going to change your culture. So you need something a little bit more sustained than that. And maybe that's something, for government to become more involved in.
That's one of the reasons why already in 2011, 2012, under the Pacific Financial Inclusion Program, at least in Fiji, we've ensured that financial education is embedded in the national curriculum. So people like us, the young at heart, probably have not benefited from that, but definitely the younger generations now, those that are graduating as we speak, most of them have actually benefited from FinEd that was taught in primary as well as secondary schools.
So while education is okay, and John, we do work with AUNZ and Westpac and a lot of these financial literacy programs, it's financial literacy. But where is the investment portfolio? Where is a place where a Toke Daldalo farmer can, look at $60,000 this year, $60,000 next year? It's probably far more than a white collar person can earn, plus other things they're doing. Where is the investment portfolio? Where is the education for them to be able to use the money to invest for themselves, for their family, for the village development, and think long term? Because most of the money, and it's funny, and I was asking them, they said, oh, well, we take a taxi from Ra to Lotoka and club and bring the taxi back. And in 3 months' time, we nicely drink and blow all our money. This guy was, joking about it and telling me, and I don't know if it's the truth, but we do see lots of vehicles being bought and, damaged. But there's long-term thinking and investment. There needs to be a longer-term thinking. Our people are not poor. It's just we have not evolved the platforms for them to be able to use their resources well enough to be able to think long term or work up long term.
I mean, there are the unit trusts which were set up for that kind of investment, so that the risk is spread. It's easily traded in when you need the money. It supposedly has more professional investment management than you, the investor, the small investor would know how to do. So there's that opportunity. Maybe it's, the challenge is in getting information about those opportunities to the farmers and to the entrepreneurs out there.
Agree.
Thank you.
Sorry, Aneet, for being your show.
That's all right.
No, that's fine. I mean, but
you're the one with the experience out there.
Well, see, that was one of the reasons why I wanted to bring you three together. You bring a lot of different perspectives, and tonight I think we all can agree that we have heard a lot of perspectives that we have to think about. I think and I believe that all those who are listening in, watching in, they have some food for thought from Sashi's perspective, from John's perspective, from what Bram had to share. So with those words, and looking at the time, of course, I will now go on to our Q&A, and there has been a lot of questions, but I'll try and link them. I think there are some recurring themes in these questions. So let's begin with this question. And either three of you can take on this question. So the first one I would like to pose to the panel is on mental health. So how does the panel process we handle mental health of entrepreneurs who have lost investments during this pandemic? And of course, we're talking about consistency building leadership. So what do you think are the challenges and some ways to improve that, help those entrepreneurs who are facing a mental challenge with the loss of income and investment during this pandemic? Any of you up for it?
I can take a bite at it first. That's something we recognize very, very widely, is especially in Nandi, when we've been talking to people, the courage was lost, or that confidence was lost, and a lot more was lost. So what we are trying to do, so you'll hear soon that we are launching an innovation fund, another fund for single mothers, and some livelihood programs that are coming up shortly. And in that, one of the things we are doing is just asking people to give us a pitch, like some thought. But we have developed a whole package where people can meet somebody, a mentor, and do venting and get emotionally and mentally supported into developing a plan that is constructive. Because some people who have been hit so many times in the last 1.5 years that it's hard for them to even think, what more can I do? So, and I'm hoping that maybe other programs like John was talking about, FDB and others, would create that space where first people are able to talk about their fears, able to vent, able to, think through some of these mental health challenges, then evolve a program or a plan where this 10,000 or 2,000 or 500 that's given to them, it's actually very constructively used, because people are badly impacted. John or Bram?
No, I agree totally. I mean, I know from, from dealing with individuals, just how soul destroying the last 18 months have been, it's just been really, really dreadful, particularly in the West and in the tourism sectors. People who had great careers, who were the breadwinners in their family, who were the successors, just overnight have become the paupers, and who have to live off other people, which they're not used to doing. That's just completely soul destroying. And so it is difficult for some people to pick yourself up. I mean, if you're not naturally resilient, and very few of us are naturally resilient, yes, it's a huge challenge. And I'm, very interested to hear that friends and other organizations like that recognize this and are doing something constructive to help people to vent, because you need to get it out before you can start growing again. Before you can start feeling positive, you got to shake all that negative feeling out of yourself. And you got to, be told that it's okay. You're not alone. Excuse the language, shit happens. And we've just got to deal with it.
Yeah, very, very true. I think it's really one of the underestimated impacts of COVID. We all talk about the financial impact, etc., but I think the long-lasting impact post-COVID. I mean, I can hardly imagine what a post-COVID world would look like, but this will definitely have, even if all the businesses are up and running again, but that mental aspect, that is definitely something that we've underestimated to a large extent, and still have not come to grips with how that will be addressed. And I think that's where most people rely primarily on community and not so much like government will hardly come in there. I expect at least.
I mean, it feeds even into the loans. For some people, they'll be so hesitant to take the risk because their confidence level is down. Once bitten or twice bitten, 3 times shy. So these are real issues.
Thank you, all of you, and of course, and I have no regrets bringing this diverse panel here, because you are sharing, as I said, friends of young people. You are sharing from experience and from your work. So all those young people and young entrepreneurs who are attending this tonight, they are, of course, listening in. I'm sure there are some who can really relate to what we just discussed about loss of investment, income, mental health. And with that, I would like to move to the next question. And this next question is on social economy. And of course, either one of you can take, or all 3 of you can take on this question. So the question is on COVID-19 has shown perils of relying on a purely capitalist economy. And moving forward, what steps can be taken to develop such a social economy in Fiji to address the short and long-term impacts of COVID-19 crisis on the economy and society at large? What is your take on that?
John?
What does that mean?
Okay, maybe I'll take a bite. So I think one of the things we've seen was barter that started, people caring for each other. I've seen collective knowledge coming together. Now, talking about social economy is also quite difficult in the pandemic, because you can't really meet your relatives. You can't meet the community. Having that community has been our mainstay. And all of a sudden you can connect, but you can't connect. And that's actually made a lot of people feel helpless, because we're so interdependent. But we did see much more of barter. We have seen much more of, the loloma that we have been able to try and support each other. Now, in cases like, for example, the work we are doing in the Yasawas, we are trying to support the single parent households, bringing them together online, and mentoring them, venting with them, helping them develop a plan for livelihoods, for example. So that kind of supporting each other really works. And one of the things, a lot of different products that we are working with are actually coming from the traditions, or the elders who are re-evolving or teaching people how to redo some of the things to meet modern market. So social economy does have a strong role to play, but that is actually quite a challenge in this pandemic when we keep telling people don't really come together. That's why I said John, because John is dealing with a whole bunch of artists and people who are actually, what I'm seeing in Suva, John, is relationships, how like you were putting things, Andy, like, Andy Blake is putting things, you knew the Nosori market vendor who's probably operating from home, but those relationships are working and you guys are still supporting each other and purchasing from each other. So that network has been amazing to see that is still being supported.
But that's where, where the business is, at least for the SMEs in the urban areas, where the opportunities are, is in the global community. The most successful fashion people at the moment during this hard time are those who are using social media effectively to sell to the Songo in North America or in Australia, like where they can still have parties and everybody dresses in Kalavata. So, if you can market to them and you are trustworthy in terms of delivery, you get the money, your sizing is correct, and you can export it on time, there's a big market there. The untapped market is the Indo-Fijian market in Australia, New Zealand, and the US, because at the moment, what I see is it's an indigenous Fijian market. The other area where I've seen sort of social economy working in a capitalist system is in the food delivery. The smarter restaurants or the smarter food outlets, at least in Suva, that are doing food delivery, as the local money has shrunk, they market to the Fijians offshore, to Loloma, to the people here. So the smart ones advertise on the basis that buy your relatives a lovo pack, buy your relatives a food pack. And so they are able to get money from a bigger market and deliver to people who really need a treat, and who will really enjoy the food. And in turn, that's a great social media story that promotes the outlet again. So there's a lot happening like that, using the diaspora to sell locally. To sell internationally, but deliver locally.
True. I think, John, another interesting venture that I think is worth mentioning, and they have operations. They started off in Tonga, but branched out also to Fiji, is Pacific Card, which is like a local e-commerce, not similar to VT-Card, but they really target the diaspora primarily in New Zealand, and get you can pick up or get it delivered from supermarkets or even hardware stores, for instance. If your let's say your family or friends in Auckland want to buy goods here in Fiji and then and get it delivered, and they primarily target that. The marketing is really on the diaspora.
Thank you, Bram, Sashi, and John. We are a bit over time, and of course, we might go maybe 10 more minutes. We do have a lot of questions, but of course, I won't be able to ask all of those. I have some questions on my own Viber, but this one is from Michael, and of course, any of you can take a go at it. It's on the agriculture scheme. So Michael is asking that the Fijian government had a scheme to give land to young people to get them into agriculture, but the take-up was very low. So what are your views? Is it a good time to revisit and repackage this scheme and promote it more actively? What are your thoughts on this?
Okay.
Ladies first.
Go ahead.
See, it's easy to say go and do agriculture. Here's land. There needs to be input, know-how, and connectivity to the market. And that's not always available. The other thing is like when everybody is doing okra, everybody is doing okra. Everybody is doing eggplant, everybody is doing. And right now, resort market in particular has shrunk. So we really need, when we are saying, here's some land, go plant it, we need to think through input, niche marketing, connecting them to the markets, helping with the whole chain, and holding hand for a period of time until they're ready to take it off. It's hard even for the seasoned agriculture people to run through the challenge of the natural disasters and droughts and floods and all sorts of things. And a lot of people say, here's a land, go plant. We are very blessed with water systems, but you'll hardly see any irrigation system to take us through drought and, like the whole period. I'll tell you one example. One farmer we had assisted with the irrigation. He had only 3 acres of land, lived by the creek, with one irrigation system that we had assisted him with. In 1 acre, he used to rotate, by 1/3, and he was doing just capsicums and tomatoes, and he was having it a resort. In 1 acre, he could turn $60,000 around. And in rainy times, he knew what crops to plant uphill, and he could manage it. But it was quite an amazing, you had to support them through a very long time for that sort of system to actually operate. There is not enough extension support and niche marketing. There's a lot of things you'll see we are importing. There's not enough thinking about processing, packaging. For example, you go with a fresh produce to try and export. There's so many rules, so many things to get through to be able to do export. Do you really expect a young person to be able to manage all that by themselves? So I think there needs to be a lot of thinking in terms of support, in terms of input, market, niche marketing, packaging, holding hands, a whole support system to get people into agriculture and make them successful. Let's not set up people for failure. Once people fail, it breaks them. And when your soul is broken, it's very hard to pick yourselves up again.
Yeah.
Boys.
Yeah, I think, Sashi, you're absolutely spot on. And one thing that I do want to, let's say, add on to your story is that very often, and it's not unique to the Pacific, but I think at least I've seen that across the world, is that where government intervenes in markets, very often the government becomes a risk, or that those kind of interventions become a risk on their own. For instance, when the support is pulled away because there are budget constraints or whatsoever, then all of a sudden, the whole model falls through. So it requires a long-term view and a long-term commitment, and very often, with, let's say, the budget cycles, the political cycles, new government comes in, different priorities, then these budgets shrink or fall through completely. Then those kind of interventions become a risk on their own. And aside from all the cyclones and the floodings, etc., these are all other risks, but that on its own becomes a risk.
So to answer your question, I don't think that this is the right time to be sending young people off into agricultural enterprises just because we need to do something. Because there's, the biggest market for agriculture is tourism. There ain't none. So if you're not in Yangon or Ndalo, what are you going to do? Where's your market?
Thank you, John, Bram, and Sashi again. Going to our next question very quickly. As a follow-up on the agriculture bit, Bram, maybe you can take a first take at it. What are some opportunities for those engaged in agriculture to market and sell their products on digital space? Is there opportunity for this on the digital space for marketing agricultural products?
I think there are definitely already different platforms on the market. I think the Kenneth and Sean Lee from Traceable have been doing some fantastic work there. But I think it's also interesting to highlight another example in Samoa. That's from a small fintech company called SkyEye. They launched the Maua app, basically making those connections for those people who grow vegetables and or sometimes make cakes, but and being able to sell that, and also going to the extent to deliver it and settle the payment. So I think these are good opportunities, but again, it requires looking beyond just setting up let's say a digital platform. It requires thinking through all the trust related issues, knowing who's at the other end of the transaction. Can I settle the transaction instantly? Or for instance, a very interesting anecdote there is on the Maua app, where they initially started only doing digital settlements, so it could only be settled through mobile money. The uptake was quite low. And then the moment they let go of that requirement and allowed for cash on delivery, all of a sudden the uptake went through the roof. And so these are dynamics that sometimes you are unforeseen, so to say. So it's and we need to allow for time to work these things out and sometimes it's literally trial and error.
I'll also say that I think for marketing, we shouldn't just see fresh. There is opportunity, like in diaspora who wants curry patta, the curry leaves, dried mango, katai. I think there has to be thinking in terms of what is the market and how much of it can be processed. We all are buying herbs. Most of it comes from outside. I've talked about turmeric earlier. So there is a real potential I think there is a potential, but how do we process and package and make sure the shelf life is there and it appears in good enough quality, so that trust. So not just fresh, but I think there is a huge potential out there. Like we do processed chutneys and jams and things, flour and herbal teas. And there's always such a demand for, say, moringa powder and cassava flour and cassava starch. So I think we need to be constantly thinking about what else do we do to improve the shelf life and the marketability of our agriculture products.
John, you have something to add? All right. We have reached about 8:15, and I still do have a lot of outstanding questions, but we'll do this last question and then I'll close up. And this last question is, of course, on the e-commerce sector again. Somebody has asked a question on the chat that Vitikrat seems to be a little expensive, proves little expensive to vendors to put their products in, and not a lot of vendors are able to access that platform. So what are some of other innovative ways, in your suggestion, you think these vendors can use apart from online? I mean, of course, we have just talked that digital is the way forward, and we have to find a way to give or provide access to these vendors. But from your experience or your ideas, maybe Bram, you can jump in, and all of you, what we can do to help bridge that gap for these vendors who are not able to access these platforms?
Yeah, I think there are some other platforms already popping up here and there. But I think when you're like a sole entrepreneur, you're not a registered business, and let's say these are the majority of the startup entrepreneurs. Start on social media, and I think John absolutely raised a very good point. There is that if you're in certain, let's say, market segments and you operate and you want to be successful, you need to know how to do digital marketing. It starts with digital marketing. All the other elements of settling transactions and delivery comes after, but digital marketing skills is really critical there.
That's what actually is the line between the successful ones that I see and the not successful. There's two things. It's the marketing and the delivery. But first, the marketing. You have to make people want your product.
Yeah, exactly. And then once you crack the nut on digital marketing and creating that demand, then you automatically bump into the other pain points like delivery, like the settlement of the transaction, those kind of things. And then once you grow, you need to consider getting a registered business, and then you become, let's say, ready for platforms like Viticart. But it's not like a one-off and think that you can go as a sole entrepreneur onto platforms like a Viticart. I think start with social media, like a Facebook, for instance. Yeah.
Thank you, Bram and John and Sashi. So I cannot go on the questions much more. There are a lot of questions, but unfortunately, we'll have to end it here. Since this is our season finale for the Young Entrepreneurs series on entrepreneurship, and thank you again for coming in. Just before I give some concluding remarks and close this off, I'll just give each of you 1 or 2 minutes at max. What advice, in concluding, what advice each of you, from your own perspectives, would you like to give to these young entrepreneurs who might be listening to us on Facebook, looking at us here, joining us on Zoom? So maybe a last piece of advice you have for these young entrepreneurs or the startups that are operating. Maybe we can start with Sashi.
It's hard to give advice at a time when people are going through extreme difficulties, because it's just an advice. What I would say is I'm seeing a lot of broken souls, and it is not an easy time. And it's not an easy time to think about ideas and have the confidence to be able to deliver it. I would ask, and I know it's very hard. We are finding people, especially who have been successful, it's very hard for them to reach out for help. But I would say that actually at this time, 80% of the country is in the same mode that you are in. And it's okay to ask for help. I would say from us, we would be announcing a lot of little training programs, back to financial management, how to do business, some great ideas. We'll be running some online trainings on different types of products that people can do. There would be FOC trainings. People could register if they don't have credit. We're happy to give them credit so they could participate in some of these Zoom conversations so they can get remotivated. And once, if they decide to pick on an idea, there will be some innovation funds and all available from us. Once they pick on an idea, they will be supported through mentorship, through counseling, through venting process, so that we can have some people picking their lives up again. And we are hoping that as each one of us gets up, we'll hold our hand to the others to pull them up. This is one of those times when even little support to each other will take us a long way. So I would just say, in these very difficult times, keep your heart open, compassionate, and try and support each other. But anybody who's going into business and people who are supporting us, please keep their trust. That trust is a very big asset, much more than any capital right now. So if somebody trusts you with market or supply or investing in your business, please keep that trust and grow that trust, because that will take us much further. Also with it will come honesty, being able to be honest and say, yes, I can't handle it right now, I can do it, or I'll do it at a later time, is extremely important, because you can lose a market, or you can gain a market, or you can gain support by honestly talking about your issues. Not being in a victim mode, oh no, I really can't, but being honest and keeping that trust, I think will keep, hold each other, us together, and be able to take us much further. So that's from me. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sashi. Over to you.
Over to who? Me. I reinforce that. Just remember, it's okay. We are all in the deep pond right now. We're all struggling. So it's okay to get help. When you get help and you want to, get your business going again and grow your business, remember, it's a business. It's not a game. You've got to be committed. You've got to follow it through. There's plans, there's discipline. You can't afford to feel too much of a victim. If you're going to go for it, go for it, and be honest and trustworthy. Because the moment you reach the trust of a customer, your business suffers. And one customer tells another customer tells another customer. So your reputation in business is all important. And like Sashi says, if for some reason you can't deliver, tell the customer. There's nothing worse, especially if you're on marketing on social media. where you don't deliver, and then all of a sudden there's posts about you and comments and people coming in and saying, yes, I know that supplier did this to me and this to me and this to me. Social media is a great marketing tool, but only if you are trustworthy, because it can ruin your reputation if you don't deliver.
Yeah, as they say, trust comes by foot but leaves on a horseback. That's yeah.
Over to you, Bram.
Yeah, I think most of it has already been covered, but I think I can only say just hang in there. And one other thing is, and I think that's important as well, is that as an entrepreneur, one of your biggest assets are your ideas. So ensure you keep them flowing. Don't let that let's say that the gloom and that comes from this pandemic hang over you as a yes, hinder your creativity, because that really, you need to keep that going. And I think that's and that makes or distinguishes a good entrepreneur from a bad entrepreneur, I would say.
Thank you so much again, Sashi, John, and Bram. And that, my dear friends, concludes our season finale for tonight, for this event. And I would like to sincerely take this opportunity to thank Ms. Kiran, Mr. Apted, and Mr. Peters for taking your time out, accepting our request, and coming on board as friends of young people. And I'm sure a lot of my colleagues who are joining from across the region, from Fiji, I can already see the comments going on that it was a very insightful discussion. And I think I owe it to my team, the Embassy Youth Council at the US Embassy in Suva, that helped me prepare these questions, frame the discussions. And of course, I know, like Sashi started by saying that it was a hard question, and then suddenly there was a link everywhere, and how the link went and the way the discussion went in a secular manner. I mean, that is something that I would implore all my friends, colleagues, and younger people who are listening in to keep the dialogue going. And the Young People's Talanoa series is one way the Embassy Youth Council intends to keep the dialogue going, intergenerational dialogue where possible, going to help support each other, to help go on shoulder to shoulder with each other in supporting during these difficult times. I'm sure the attendees tonight have taken note of a lot of things. A lot of discussions have happened across areas of importance of leadership resilience, importance of maintaining partnerships, the importance of digital platform, the issue of digital divide, digital literacy. I mean, I think a lot of us have to ponder upon these things, go back and think of how lucky we might be living in Suva or in the city, as opposed to those living in Yasawas and other remote places in the Pacific region. So I'm really sure, and I hope that we'll keep these discussions going. I would implore everyone to keep these discussions going. These are really important topics that's going to help shape our post-COVID future and our economic recovery. So once again, with those words, thank you very much once again, Ms. Kiran, Mr. Apted, Mr. Peters, and to all our friends, our colleagues joining us from all the way from, I just saw the comment from Nauru, students from Nauru listening in, Samoa. So thank you so much to all our attendees, even from Fiji, who are listening in and taking out your time. We have gone overboard by 23 minutes, but I don't think we have any regrets on that. So once again, big Vinaka Vakalevu, thank you and have a good night.
Thank you so much.